bringing you the news and information you need from the people making a difference. This is Comcast Newsmakers.
Well, I'm glad you could join it. Those of us who were lucky enough to grow up in San Francisco remember things like the early days of Japantown and the changes throughout many parts of the city. But Fillmore Street is one that has gone through some of the biggest changes, I think, any part of the city. Peter Fitzsimmons is here right now. He's Executive Director of the Jazz Heritage Center, located, ironically enough, on Fillmore Street. Nice to see you, Peter.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Tell us a little history of, from your standpoint, of Fillmore Street.
I was born and raised in the Fillmore. My dad played in all the great clubs that used to exist on the Fillmore Boulevard, including Bop City, Club Alabama, Cafe Society. There were like 20 or 30 clubs up and down Fillmore Street in the 40s and 50s. And then there's history that goes back before that with Saunders King leading the big bands and Charles Sullivan running the Fillmore Auditorium before, you know, Bill Graham, and having jazz and R&B come through the Fillmore. It was an exciting time, vital district. And then it all went away when we had redevelopment and an eminent domain and bulldozers and wrecking blocks.
And big buildings.
Big buildings,
yeah.
And buildings being moved across town and Victorians being taken over or dismantled. And so we had a blighted area there for 60s through the 70s into the 80s and almost into now, because the last partial in the Fillmore district at Fillmore and Eddy is where we now have Yoshi's Jazz Club, 1300, an elegant African-American owned restaurant, and the Jazz Heritage Center, a nonprofit that I run, and we have the Lush Life Gallery, 1320 Fillmore Street. Beautiful art gallery with exhibits going on nonstop, world class. Yeah.
How long have you been executive director of that?
We brainstormed this with Michael Johnson, the developer. In 2005, we ground broke. In 2007, we opened. It's been a long time coming. My mom, Pat Nacy, used to run the great jazz clubs and had concerts with the legends of jazz, including Vernon Alley, my dad, F. Allen Smith, Mary Stallings, Denise Perrier, in preparation to see that the community really wanted to support a revitalized jazz preservation district. And the consensus was, you know, overwhelmingly, yes, let's bring it back. Let's get people back in the Fillmore, let's rebuild this place.
And it's happening.
It's happening.
Okay, for example, you brought me this little tiny poster. I'm just referring to it here. But this is artwork. Art. Give us something about that. I mean, the combination is natural, I would think.
Right. We have Jazz Heritage Center. So obviously we honor the jazz legends, the history of jazz in the Fillmore, the history of jazz in America, the fact that jazz, the word jazz was coined in a newspaper in San Francisco at the turn of the century. We have a lot of history that we're trying to let folks know.
Coined? I don't know that.
Coined in a newspaper back called Bulletin, one of those, you know, rags at the time. And a lot of people don't know that there was a Barbary Coast history of jazz going on in, you know, turn of the century, and Jelly Roll Morton would visit the city and get some tips and maybe take it back via the Pullman Porters and spread the word of jazz, and of course New Orleans ran with it, and they get most of the credit for the origins, but there's some things that we want to put into the mix down the road. We will let people know more about that.
Sure.
So anyhow, so we then fast forward, and now we're back to now, and we're revitalizing the area with great Yoshi's Jazz Club, bringing it back, and then the Jazz Heritage Center. We do a lot of exhibits, not only about jazz, but about the heritage of the neighborhood. And that's where we get into the current exhibit, which is Bernard Zackheim, The Art of Prophetic Justice. This is a man who did the murals at Coit Tower, worked under Diego Rivera, and as nobody knows Bernard Zackheim. So right now we have an exhibit in the lobby, the Corette Heritage Lobby, going into Yoshi's, and then we have art for sale in the art gallery called the Lush Life Gallery.
Wow. Well, now, he also did the JCC, right? The Jewish Community
Correct. There are murals.
The new one, the murals they did in there.
Correct.
But the Coit Tower? He worked
on the Coit Tower. There's a library scene in the mural at Coit Tower under the direction of Diego Rivera. That is just amazing artwork.
Okay. Peter, thank you for joining us. San Francisco, as you well know, has a long history in jazz and art and music and all kinds of things. Of course, jazz is music. Peter Fitzsimmons is here right now. He's Executive Director of the Jazz Heritage Center. And there's an event that's coming up that I'm intrigued by the title, United Nations of Jazz.
That's right.
Give us a little background on that.
United Nations of Jazz, the 3rd year anniversary of the Jazz Heritage Center, and it's what we're calling our Friendraiser. Jazz Heritage Center has been there 3 years, and we've shown incredible exhibits, world-class exhibits in the Corette Heritage Lobby, in the Lush Life Gallery. We now have the Media and Education Theater where we show movies, the history of the Fillmore, and as you know, the history of the Fillmore is the United Nations melting pot.
Yeah.
Not only of jazz, but of multicultural accomplishments, Japanese Americans, the African Americans, the Jewish population that lived there at the turn of the century, and the Filipino jazz movement. So much happened in the Fillmore that we try to embrace all of it and tell a story as if we were the United Nations.
That is a long story.
I tell you.
It is, having been born in the city and knowing what went on there. But there was a time in which that was sort of lost.
Right.
Right? I mean,
Right.
and the buildings changed and things changed and so forth. And now this is sort of an effort to bring some of that back, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is a concerted effort to make the Fillmore a true destination spot so we can bring people back to San Francisco, back into the Fillmore, and start to enjoy some of the revitalized jazz efforts at Yoshi's San Francisco. In our case, we're having a gala Friendraiser on November 17th, and we want everybody to come on down and see the amazing accomplishments of the Jazz Heritage Center and help us and support us.
Yeah. What kind of things will happen when I show
We've
up?
got music in Yoshi's Lounge. We've got music in the Lush Life Gallery. Top-notch musicians. Tony Lindsay will be there. We've got movies in the screening room, which we now call the Media and Education Theater. We have exhibits in the lobby as well as in the Lush Life Gallery.
Okay, what kind of movies? I mean, what movies, for
Well,
example, that were, I assume that they're all aimed in the direction that we're talking about here.
There's one that I was involved with, which is close to my heart, called The Legend of Bop City.
Really?
The Legend of Bop City tells the
Was
whole
this a documentary kind of thing?
Documentary, correct.
Yeah.
And there's obviously the PBS special. I'm sure that's okay to mention. They did
Sure.
one on the history of the Fillmore
Oh,
that
yeah.
really documents what happened.
No,
when
it's
they,
not okay to mention PBS. Of course it is. Yeah. Yeah. Now, your dad was a musician, is that right?
F. Allen Smith, yes. A prominent musician, trumpet player, played at Bop City and all the great clubs up and down Fillmore.
Okay. Now,
Toured with Benny Goodman.
Wow. Benny Goodman, one of my heroes.
Throw that out there.
Peter, when you were a little kid, we're going to find out something about Peter Fitzsimmons. Was your dad, he was playing trumpet, you said? Okay.
Absolutely.
Did he practice around the house?
Dad,
I mean, do you remember lying in bed like, please be quiet, I have to go to school?
it was more like staying up late nights at
Yeah.
Bop City with the jam sessions and the cutting sessions as a baby that was referred to as the Bop City baby. And so
Really?
I've got that in the
So you
legacy.
got to sit around the club?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
that?
I got to meet Ella Fitzgerald and some of the greats that came through, Tony Bennett, all of them. Dad
Tony
played with
Bennett's a
Count
great guy.
Basie, Dizzy Gillespie. They all were
Yeah,
dear friends of Dad, so
Yeah.
I knew some legends.
yeah. What a heritage you have.
Right. But I want to invite everybody to come on down for
This
the
is
United
the
Nations.
United Nations of Jazz, right?
Correct.
Okay.
3rd year gala fundraiser.
Okay, November 17th.
Correct.
Okay, open to the public, obviously.
1320 and 1330
Yeah.
Fillmore Street.
Yeah. Okay, now will people that you know will be there, will be coming there? I mean, jazz musicians, people you know, family, friends, what?
I could drop some names. We
Drop
have
a name.
John Handy, one of our dearest friends, will
Yeah.
be there to support us.
Yeah.
We've got Mary Stallings, Denise Perrier, legendary musicians that are going forward with their careers, come back and give a hand to the Jazz Heritage Center to let you know that this is where our roots are, obviously jazz.
All right, good to have you here, Peter.
Great.
Peter Fitzsimmons, our guest, Executive Director of the Jazz Heritage Center, the United Nations of Jazz, on November 17th in Fillmore. Thanks very much for watching, and you were one lucky guy.